Today we're going to spend some quality time with a 3.6 liter Pentastar oil filter assembly, housing assembly, cooler assembly, adapter assembly. It goes by multiple names. I want to sit there and spend some time on the bench showing you what each one of the components are that's on the assembly, as well as some common failures, as well as some customer related failures. So we'll get started with pinpointing everything and then explaining a few of these items. So hang tight. So now we got a little bit close-up look of our Pentastar 3.6 liter. It's common to Dodge, Chrysler, Jeeps all across the board on all our makes and models right now. Fairly good engine. It does have a couple little hiccups, I guess you could say. So let's go ahead and give you a little rundown on here. This is a water-cooled oil cooler, so there will be antifreeze going through this assembly here. You've got a hose hook up on the back. That's one location you'll get your antifreeze through, as well as one of the ports on the bottom. You've got your oil temp sensor. Looks like any kind of coolant temp sensor you've ever seen. This is strictly for the oil temp. Here is our common failure point, which is an oil pressure sending unit. There's been some revisions over the years, and we're still replacing them from time to time. Evidently it's a manufacturer issue or design issue, because it's not just related to a 3.6 liter Pentastar. We replace them on the Hemis as well, and that's the location for it. Now, some of y'all have probably seen, or if you subscribe to my videos, you may have seen a video where I actually replaced the sensor on a minivan already. So here's another view of it, minus the engine, transmission, and the intake, so you can get a basic idea of where it's located. We'll move on to where the oil filter goes. It is cartridge fed, inserted, replaceable. There are two versions of this. 2013s and below have this style. This is what the filter looks like. The 2014s and above have a different style, and I'll show you examples of that shortly as well. One common failure on these, once they get some miles possibly, or maybe someone's either damaged it while replacing the filter, is there is a oil pressure bypass valve in the end of this housing here. It sits in this little tower. I currently have it removed so that I can show you on the bench what it looks like up close and how it operates. What you'll find from time to time is the assembly will break. The valve is a cage style with a spring that goes from one end of it down to the end of in a recess in here. And that cage will break and it will separate. You may find half of that valve in here as well as a spring, or once you remove it, you may walk off and do something else and hear a noise, and at that point it's then jumped out of its housing. Now when that does break, currently there are no companies on the market that I've seen that sell replacement parts for this. Neither does the dealer. They end up showing you the complete assembly. Problem solved. Of course, it'd be nice to have a small little valve to put back in there and be done with and save you a few bucks. Nonetheless, that's what the older style looks like. Now the newer style, they've done away with this. The filter is a completely different design, protrudes further down inside, so you won't have this problem no more, and that possibly may be why they changed the design. Another common issue you might find are actually oil leaks. If you're observing a 3.6 liter, it's got a lot of oil underneath. Trying to find where it's coming from, you may find around the transmission bell housing, around the transmission, that oil is coming from that location. If you look under the hood of the vehicle, try to look around the front area here where the oil filter housing is, or if you need to look from the back side where the transmission is, you may see oil in the area that accumulates between the heads. I call it the valley. If you see that, the leak's going to be related to this housing. Now you can replace the seal separately if you like. I personally would rather replace the entire assembly because I cannot check this while it's on the vehicle. I can clean everything, refire it up, check. Sure, I've got a leak somewhere in that general vicinity. I cannot look up under. I can't tell which seal might be leaking or if it's a design flaw in the housing. So I personally recommend replacing the entire housing. Now if you don't mind a little extra time, extra work, go ahead, replace your seals. Clean it off. Maybe you'll get lucky first time and not have any problems. But that's all up to you as far as if you want to do it again. If it's your own vehicle, Probably resealing it with the seal is probably a good start, as long as you feel confident in doing the repair. If you're doing it as a mechanic and you don't want to have to work on the car more than once, you don't want to have an irate customer coming back more than once, I'd probably go ahead and do the reassembly now. Now right here where the actual cartridge goes in, there's a little opening at the top. And it's basically a valve. And that valve, there's a spring in here. And as I push down, you can see it overcomes the tension. Basically what that is an oil filter bypass valve. So basically the engine is designed to run even if the oil filter gets clogged up. So in theory, dirty oil is better than no oil. So once the oil pressure exceeds what the filter capacity can, for example, we've got restriction in here, the oil pressure actually will press or cause that valve to open. Now what you'll find from time to time, especially when it gets some age on it and some wear, you'll either take your oil filter out, or for example, the last instance I had, I walked away and I heard a noise after I'd taken the filter out. Come back, the valve was gone. They have a tendency, because there is some pretty good spring tension here, and that plastic is real thin as far as how it's designed. The valve itself is basically a cage in the spring in the middle, and what will happen is that cage will break around the outside edge and the valve will actually come out, as well as the spring. You may find the spring in there, you may find pieces still in there, and I've researched everywhere I can. I have not found any replacements for this. The only replacement is the whole assembly. So keep in mind when you're working on it, see if you can see that valve in there. If you don't see that valve in there, then you're going to run into another problem where you're going to get unfiltered oil going through the filter, because there's nothing there to stop the oil from bypassing the filter at that point. So definitely pay attention to that. And like I said, on the newer models, when they did away with this, they went to a different style filter completely. Another thing you might look out for. Now like I said, they came out with two different styles, and they also had two different style filters. One's a little bit longer, has a little plastic end on it with an O-ring that gets started down into the cartridge like this, into the housing. And then you've got the older style like I was showing you right here that has that one valve built onto the housing that has a tendency to want to pop out, break, etc. Now, I have seen where people have put the wrong filters in. They've gone to the parts store gives them the wrong one, and they force it down in there. Usually what happens is they're putting an old style in a new style housing. Now you would think possibly it wouldn't fit. Well, it is a paper gasket, or filter, excuse me. So once you tighten down that cap, it can compress it. It will make it fit whatever it needs it to be. That's when you start running into a problem with no oil pressure. For example, I had one not too long ago. Speaking of the oil pressure sending unit issues, I had one where I was setting codes and I wasn't getting oil pressure code, no oil pressure being sent as far as signal. Went through the test, replaced the oil pressure sending unit. After that, code went away, but now my low oil pressure light came on. So of course I'm scratching my head thinking, what did I do? Went back to the whole scenario, checked all the wirings fine. Went through, just being kind of dumb, I guess, well, it had to be the bad sensor. Went in and put another sensor. Same issue. At this point I'm going, okay, this isn't making any sense. What did I do wrong? Because it didn't have a low oil pressure light when it came in, just a check engine light. Well, now I fixed the check engine light and I got a low oil pressure code. So at that point, go ahead and bring out the oil pressure gauge. Hook up the external one, hook it up to where the sensor was and get a reading. I've got 0. At that point I decided, well, let's just do a one quick check. Open up the oil filter housing cap, take it off. Exactly what I found. Someone had put a different style filter in it inside the housing. So not only was the check engine light coming on saying it wasn't getting oil pressure, once I fixed that, I had a completely different problem that was not registering before because the oil pressure sending wasn't working. Once it started working, it wasn't reading anything. Whole new scenario. So that could almost blown that engine up because it was got no oil pressure, and the oil change was just done recently by the customer because they picked up some parts from Napa. And basically, you know how it is dealing with some parts people sometimes. They give you what they give you, and it ain't always right. So hopefully you learned a few things. about that 3.6 liter Pentastar oil filter adapter, cooler, housing, whatever you want to call it. Tomato, same difference. So at least you know where that oil pressure sealing is, you know the issues with people putting the wrong filters in, you know the issues about the possible oil leaks, as well as that issue with that oil filter bypass. So now I've showed you off the car. If I ever get a chance to show you replacing one, I'll make sure I do a video on it. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Also, any thumbs up, thumbs down. I appreciate the comments. They let me know how things are going. With that, have a good one.